What is the problem? And I have to say that argument could go on for hundreds of years, because each one of you can prove scientifically that you are right. The person in Chennai can take an icicle and whack the person in Bangalore over the head and say, yep, I just proved to you that water is hard, and here I'll whack you again if you don't believe me. And the person in Calcutta can hold your hand above that scalding hot steam and convince you it can take the skin off your bones, and it is hot and gaseous. And that argument could go on forever, because each one of you can support your argument with scientific tests over and over again, always validated. What is the problem with that argument? How are we going to break through that argument and get to something where we can all have common understanding? Does anybody have a suggestion for that? To press your mic button and tell me what your suggestion might be.
I think that's where I think that's where the explicit knowledge bit comes in, where you share your knowledge with others and try to understand their point of view.
Okay. And but I've just given you 3 different points of view. Somebody believes that it's hard and cold, and somebody believes that it's soft, warm, and soft to the touch and warm and liquid. And another person believes it's gaseous and hot and steamy and takes the skin right off your bones. How are we going to resolve that argument? Now, they can share between each other, but each one is holding firm to and they're proving by scientific method that I'm absolutely right. By golly, down in Chennai, I can see you sitting back now. I see you. You're dead set in your concept that, no, by golly, it is hard and cold, and I can whack you over the head 1,000 times. You need 10,000 to make it a scientifically, provable point. You whack them 10,000 times. How are we going to break through this argument? What is the problem? If you go back to that slide again, you'll see the text of that slide, the lead up to it, says if water is one of the most ubiquitous tangibles on Earth, and it can be described in those ways, how much more difficult it's going to be to describe knowledge? The intangible, the most ubiquitous intangible. Does anybody have an idea on that? Come on, you folks, wake up. How can we break through this impasse?
Yeah.
Any engineers? Chennai, engineer down in Chennai.
Yeah. So you could make a start by appreciating that if you were in the other person's shoes, you may experience water differently.
Okay. Well, you guys are just too deep. Just too deep. I was going to take a break there while you were talking.
And for example, you could say that people in the South Pole stand upside down.
Yeah. Okay. But you guys are just
need some experience sharing to appreciate that both could be right.
Yes. You're getting at it. You're coming back down to earth a little bit. Thank you for that. But you're still being a little too philosophical. Maybe that's your nature. What if I told you temperature was a problem? What if I told you that if we could just define what the temperature is, we could resolve this issue, couldn't we? If the temperature was below 0 degrees Celsius, then of course, Chennai, you're right. It is hard, cold, and I could whack you over the head with it. If it was someplace between 0 and 100 degrees Celsius, then where were we? In Bangalore. Bangalore would say, well, it is liquid and warm. And the rest of you would agree with it. And Calcutta, you would say, well, if it gets above 100 degrees Celsius, then it is steam. If you just understood the temperature, you could really have an understanding of water, and you wouldn't have hundreds of years' worth of fighting each other. I could just see wars erupting over this, trade barriers being put up to protect your borders and whatnot, all over this issue that you can't even resolve what water is. But if you just knew that one attribute called temperature, and if there's a few of you scientists in the group, you might say, well, pressure has something to do with it as well. Okay, well, maybe there's 2 attributes. Well, compared to water, where 2 attributes help you to define water, knowledge has some 25 different attributes. And they're not complex. They're no more complex than understanding the temperature I just described. But you need to understand the 25 attributes about knowledge to have a full appreciation of knowledge and the impact it can have. In this session today, all I can do is introduce to you that concept of knowledge attributes. But it is extremely important. When people have arguments around knowledge management, if you understand that there are different knowledge attributes, you might be able to solve that argument and move forward in a productive manner. I could see in knowledge cases, the equivalent of the water, they could argue for that for months, if not years. But if you can break through that argument by simply saying, well, what temperature are you folks talking about? then the argument would end up with an easy understanding amongst all of you. Now, most of you have probably read a few books about knowledge management. That's why you're giving me all these advanced theories about sharing and all that. That's very good. I'm not knocking that. I was being a little more basic on this slide to introduce the concept of knowledge attributes. And if you want to be good at knowledge management, and if you want your organization to really perform and increase its performance substantially, you need to do knowledge management, and you need to understand the basic attributes of knowledge to be able to fully execute on knowledge management. There's a slide I have next which is not up there. So Darius, you can hold back for a moment on that. My slide that you do not have is a joke, so you can get ready to press your buttons to give me a laugh if you think it's funny. So get prepared for this. Listen carefully now. This is going to lead to one of the first principles of knowledge management. And Harriet, you're already chuckling because you know what this one is, right? I can see you there chuckling. Okay, a thief broke into a local police station and stole all the lavatory equipment. In other words, the facilities. And a spokesperson was quoted as saying, "We have nothing to go on." Nobody. I have to think about it for a second. Those who are of us into forensics know she meant, or that spokesperson meant, there's no evidence that may lead to an arrest. But some of you may have been thinking, well, all the lavatory equipment is gone and we have nothing to go on, literally. Well, what I'd like to do... Okay, I got a few laughs there. Thank you.
V for victory, not B. Not... There may be some confusion about LAV.
On lavatory. Okay, lavatory equipment. Yes, the toilets, etc.
Adding on.
So now you're picking up on it. Okay, I'm going to have to change that word then. A thief broke into a local police station and stole all the toilet equipment. The spokesperson was quoted as saying, "We have nothing to go on." I'm going to give you now something to go on. Let me introduce the name of a person to whom you might be, that you might be familiar with. His name is Sir Thomas Crapper. Has anybody heard of Sir Thomas Crapper?
Never.
Nobody. No historians, no inventors there. Okay, so as soon as you hear what he invented, you'll recognize immediately. Sir Thomas Crapper invented the flush toilet.
Okay.
So one of the first principles of knowledge management is what I call the Crapper principle. Can anybody imagine what the Crapper principle is? Don't all raise your hand at one time now. All right. Well, I'll suggest the answer to you. The Crapper principle says one of the worst mistakes we make in knowledge management is just building a pile of... Do I hear the last word of that?
We can read your lips.
Okay. Yeah, well, I didn't use the word. See, an instructor has to be very careful about using bathroom humor. So I'm very careful about this Crapper principle. You notice I'm touching very gingerly on it. But the Crapper principle is you just can't build piles of... Somebody? Okay. You all know what the word is, crap. Okay, I'll have to say it then because I'm just not... It's like pulling teeth here, trying to get you guys to and gals to come up with something. But the concept is the first principle of knowledge management, and a violation is doomed to failure, is don't just go out and build a pile of crap. Now, what is a pile of crap? A pile of crap is knowledge that you're building into some great repository that has no real use. Okay, everybody got that concept? First principle of knowledge management, the Crapper principle.